the UN taking a veiled shot at Poland and other countries in Eastern Europe for stepping back from their support. Poland says, yes, they do reserve the right to resume those weapons shipments, but for now, they're pulling them back.
Yeah, and you know, Richard, there's an election in Poland in a couple of weeks. It's going to be a heated, just a critical election for the direction of Poland's democracy. That said, Zelensky could have picked a better time to start criticizing people in Eastern Europe. I know when we were given $40 billion, I remember one time saying on the show, you know what, just saying thank you might be a good start. I understand what he's going through, but you look at history, you look at what Winston Churchill did with FDR, how he constantly worked him, constantly lobbied him, constantly played him, it was all over him and keeping FDR in the game. It meant the survival. I will say Zelensky, time and again, insults a lot of allies that are giving him billions of dollars. And the Poles finally said enough. I think, again, the Poles will come back. But we all remember the beginning stages of the wars, Poland literally threw open its door to millions and millions and millions of Ukrainian refugees. Nobody was more open. Nobody was more supportive. So, yeah, this is a really bad development.
It's bad development, but Poland will continue to transship all the arms from other places. You're right. It's about the elections coming up, cheap grain coming from Ukraine, Polish farmers unhappy with it. But Joe, I think there's a larger story going on here. Mm-hmm. There's a bit of war fatigue. Mm-hmm. We're seeing it in Poland, refugee fatigue. You're seeing it in Washington. We're seeing that the counteroffensive, quote unquote, is not going to deliver liberation of territory anytime soon, if ever. There's a gap increasingly between the war aims of Ukraine and what's happening on the battlefield and the patience of other places.
Stop. Just Memphis, just do me a favor. Hold it right there because it's my head's is blown up. It's perfect. It's Friday, 22 September, the year Lord 2023. In Memphis, I'm going to probably ask if my crack production team here in Memphis, I'm going to want to replay that one when the guy starts talking about war fatigue. Think about it for a second. You've had 50,000 casualties in Ukraine. Women, children, young men and women that have volunteered to fight. And sometimes been shanghaied to fight, but to fight for their country. 50,000 dead. That's not my number. It's not Ben Harnwell's number. We're going to have Betrix von Storch on here in a minute from the Alternative for Deutschland. It's not her number. That's the number of the Pentagon, of which, in the New York Times, of which the Ukrainians agree with, is another 125,000 wounded, 150,000 wounded. And I'm not sure those numbers even incorporate what's happened in this counteroffensive. Okay, I'm not sure it's in the counteroffensive. All in the counteroffensive. And look at them right there. All the people that goaded them into this, I think there's some war fatigue. What fatigue have you got? Sitting there with your cup of coffee and pontiff. What fatigue do you have? What fatigue? Please tell me. Morning Mika, Morning Joe. This is how awful and evil these people are. This is what they are. Okay, this is what they are. They sit there, like Professor Mersheimer says, and they've led them down the primrose path, as we've said on this show from the very beginning of this war. And now that's getting tough. Oh, there's war fatigue. No, we had the fatigue immediately because we told you this was going to happen. This is the knitted brow. These are your betters. These are your betters. Sitting there with the knitted brow, there is some war fatigue in the capital. There's not war fatigue in Poland. And this is not about a political campaign that's coming up. The Polish farmers don't want to be destroyed by the cheap Ukrainian wheat. This is they're trying to put their country first. Also, they're giving tremendous benefits. The Polish people who don't have that kind of money, this is what being a Catholic nation of giving, and nobody gives more than the Poles, and in their history, look what's happened to them. They gave tremendous benefits. They gave health care and education and all of it to a couple of million refugees that went across. We told everyone this was going to happen. I would love to have the 50,000 dead. The 50,000 dead watch what we just saw right there. And there's more to come, and we'll play in a second, Ben, but we got Betrix up here. There's so much going on in Europe that's inextricably linked to here in the United States, and obviously vice versa. But I need you. You're a guy in Rome that's done the best of keeping your eyes on what's happening in Europe. I can tell you from a fairly ringside seat in the United States with people that are on the inside and were there, this was a catastrophically disastrous visit by Zelensky. He very foolishly, because he doesn't have a lot of common sense, not in a million years should he have come to Washington. It was stupid enough for him to go to the United Nations. He should have just stayed there, gratitude, worked on the counteroffensive. Coming here, it's the death knell of the Ukrainian support. The number's going to be zero. There are going to be huge fights, and even Democrats are going to peel away. Biden's going to peel away because the tide's turned. Everybody's now listening to what we're saying and what Gates and these other people are saying. It's no more Ukrainian funding. MTG, who's really had McCarthy's back, she was the deciding vote on the defense budget. And she said, until you take the $300 million out of the $880 billion defense budget, $330 million out, I don't even want to come to the floor. That's how worked up people are on this. Ben, give us your perspective. I say it was catastrophic. Nobody wanted a photo op with him. McCarthy's guys, no meetings, no no general talking even to the Republican Congress or people in the House, and even people that were there with him saying it was just he's tonally deaf. Your assessment, sir?
Well, Steve, good afternoon to you. My first question here is, wasn't there anybody in the administration telling Zelensky on the phone, don't come? Do not come. Now is not the time to come. It's going to be counterproductive. It's going to go against you. Was there nobody there in Washington, D.C. feeding him that message? And if that message was going through to him, then the obvious question is that he chose deliberately to disregard that advice and to come anyway. And then, therefore, I would say here he owns the responsibility for the consequences of this, because this, we said back in July in Vilnius at the in the annual NATO conference in Lithuania, we said in real time the very day that conference took place, and there was the photo there of all the heads of state and heads of government, and Zelensky was there. In one moment, he was just standing there on the stage by himself. That spawned 1,000 memes, that photo in and of itself. But we said that very day, this program said, this is the moment in the future we're going to look back and say, this is the moment that NATO started to pivot away from its support of Ukraine. And these are the follow-on consequences of that. And I think it's absolutely clear. Just to give a bit of background to what's going on in Poland right now, early on this year, their wheat imports from Ukraine, Poland is largely an agricultural economy still. Their wheat imports from Ukraine exploded by 600%. Now you can imagine what that will do to the productive agricultural base of that economy. And it's therefore only sort of natural that a government that isn't comprised of sociopaths, that is trying to stay close to the people, will respond to that anger there that is latent in the Polish people. So when Richard Haas says, there might be a bit of Ukraine fatigue, I'll flag up if Memphis wants to produce my first article while I'm talking here. The BBC is pushing the same line. There's a bit of Ukraine fatigue. It's not Ukraine fatigue in and of itself, because we indicated a year and a half ago what the consequences are going to be. It's a case that there's on the 15th of October, Steve, there's an election in Poland, and the Law and Justice Party, the present governing party, the PIS, they're neck and neck. Right? It's going to be a close run thing. And there's a party, and everyone says that the Law and Justice are extreme right and far right. There's actually a party further to the right of Law and Justice called Federatsa. They're on 10%. So for their own survival, Steve, this government has to now start responding to the anger in Poland. After the break, I'm going to come back and talk about that. And it's not only in Poland either. You ask me every other day, what's going on in Europe, what's going on in the capitals. We are really starting to see now And I would suggest to some extent it is related to what's going on in the United States. We are really starting to see a fight back now in Europe's capitals. And it's really sort of been breaking out into the public over this last week.
I'm going to come back and we're getting more into Ukraine, and we'll talk about this populist, the populist right, because now, of course, I think the FT's got to blame us. We're going to be the ones to take down. We're the biggest problem to climate change. We're going to talk about. We got Dave Walsh on here too, talk about Kerry and all of it. But I want to bring in Betrix Storch, the deputy chair of Alternative for Deutschland. First thing, Betrix, tell us how. Tell us how. Hang on for 1 second. Is she ready to go? Okay. We don't have Betrix? Okay, fine. I'll go back to Ben. Dave, just hang on for 1 second. Ben, on this on the populist right, the first question I got for Betrix is that how did they come out of nowhere and become the number 2 party? I mean, you're seeing the populist right, but Alternative for Deutschland was marginalized. You remember, you and I spent a lot of time in Europe trying to build this coalition. Is now coming together, but they were the ones that were most marginalized. I remember I went to Berlin. They were the most marginalized as, neo-fascists. They were anti-immigration. They're anti-human, and now they're the second biggest party in Germany.
Well, they got that way. You asked the question: how did that happen? How did they come from nothing to being the second largest party? And it's because the mainstream parties ignored the German people. It's as simple as that. They ignored them. They persisted in ignoring them for long enough. And in a certain way, politics is like the free market, isn't it? If there's nobody there supplying a want and a need in the market, a supplier will arise. And that's exactly what's happened with the Alternative for Deutschland. They started responding to an anger and disgust in the German people that the locked-in establishment parties, the Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats, refused even to recognise existed, because these are the skinheads, these are the Nazis. We'll put a cordon sanitaire around this section of the population, and we'll just ignore them because they're deplorables and all the rest of it. But of course they're not. They're ordinary German working people who have this romantic notion that a government should put their interests first regarding interests of other people. For example, the million or so supposedly asylum seekers that Germany accepted in 1 year alone under Angela Merkel. That sort of created the massive anger that was there in Germany, and people like Betrix von Storch, who is excellent, by the way, Alice Weidel, they came in and they've responded to this anger, and that's what's happening all across Europe now. There's an article, Steve, in The Economist, which has an amazing fact, right? And this just basically shows you, I think, how the war room and the economic nationalism that we've been spearheading here has really been ahead of the curve. But here's the situation in continental Europe. This is, and I quote The Economist here, our calculations show that 15 of the European Union's 27 member states now have hard right parties which have support of 20% or more in opinion polls. That is to say, almost 4/5 of the EU's population now live in countries where the hard right commands a loyalty of at least a fifth of the public. And that, Steve, that is only going to grow.
I agree with you 100%. I think the Ukraine situation brought out. Ben, hang on. And Dave Walsh, hang on. We got a lot to get to. I think Betrix is, I think she's up. Betrix, do we have? Yes, there you are. Deputy Head Alternative for Deutschland. Betrix, here's the first question. Our audience, we've put up a lot of stuff on Getter and follow you closely. But tell us in your own words, because you guys have gone through some tough times. How did you guys come back to be the second biggest party now in all of Germany?
Well, first of all the party is performing very good, but to be honest, it's just the governing who's just ruining, it's just destroying our country, and people are just fed up with this. The biggest issue is migration, and they don't want to stop it. No, they are increasing the numbers of migration, and people just realize that's impossible. We can't bear any more migrants. So that's the first thing. Then they want to put climate change first, and they are just not focusing on the interests of the people. They just came up with a law which will force every private house owner to invest something like 100,000 euros to reinstall a new heating system, even though there's a working one in the house. So they are just not meeting the people's interest, and the country basically stops of being a functioning first world country. This is what the people have the impression, and this is why we're number 2 in the whole of the Federal Republic of Germany, and we are the number 1 in the eastern states of Germany.
The economy's also, I think that Germany's either in a recession or leading Europe into recession. Talk to us about the overall economic and how the government's managed the economy.
Well, they're managing the economy and driving them out of Germany. So we have seen something like 140 billion euros who left Germany because the industry and economy, they do not want to invest the money any longer in Germany, because that will definitely mean you will lose your money. Because we are declining, we are shortening the supply of energy. The price is just up 100% again, even though it has been up 70% when after Merkel's governance. So it is no longer possible to run your industry here with reasonable energy prices. There are a lot of things which are not good for German economy, and basically the government is doing the contrary of what it should do. And this is why our numbers going up and up and up the whole time, even though the whole media is running a huge campaign against us. They call us all kinds of unnice things, stupid things. We're extremists and what kind soever, but people realize that that's not true, and that's basically the government is extremistic in all policy areas what they address.
But it's not just the media. I mean, people should know, and you and your husband are two of the bravest individuals. I remember Jason went over to visit with you, Jason Miller, who's now senior vice president, President Trump, spent a lot of time with you guys. The pressure you're under, not just from the media, but the government actually steps in and treats Alternative for Deutschland like it's some sort of bandit party, does it not?
It does. And it declares even openly that they do so. We've got a secret service which is run by our political opponents, and they're coming after us with these measures. So they declare us to be, the enemy of the Constitution. And this is why, they spy on our iPhones and whatsoever. But you know what? People are just bored with that. People just they're not so much interested in that any longer. The Secret Service has lost its credibility, and people realize that something has to change. And there is a majority within former right-wing conservative liberal parties. And the main problem, what we can see in Germany, is that there could be a reasonable majority center-right, but the CDU, the former Merkel's Chancellor's party, they are trying to govern again with the Greens. So it's the conservatives who are not trying to form a coalition or a government with us, but with the Greens or with the left. And so we are heading towards a very bad situation, which is fueling our numbers wider. We are going up and they will go down.
But this is the same thing I would call the Christian Democrat, just like the Tory party in England and just like the traditional Republican Party in the United States. They are essentially they're working for the Uniparty now against a populist, whether that's Alternative for Deutschland, whether it's the Brexiteers and the Nigel Farage group or whether it's MAGA and the deplorables under President Trump. In fact, I want to get to that point. The Economist this week, I think the lead story, they're in shock. They're clutching their pearls because they say there's the rise of this populist right. And of course, leading that article, of which the Economist is shocked and very nervous about, is Alternative for Deutschland, and of course the Law and Justice Party that's going to have these elections in November in Poland. Talk to us about what's happening. Why across the continent? And you're one of the leaders of this, but you see Salvini, you see Le Pen, you see a resurgence in the right, a new energy, a new urgency, and now you're having people. There's this report the other day that up to 1/3, I think, of people actually are open to vote for people on the populist right. And as Ben just said, even in the Economist article, I think they said that 20% of adults, of citizens in countries, will actually end up voting for the populist right. What's the reality, and why is the Economist so shocked? Like this is the worst thing that's happened since the rise of Hitler and Mussolini in the 1930s.
I think what we can see is just basically, to make a long story short, people are just fed up with this leftist, wokist, anti-rational, stupid policy in all areas. They're just tired. They see that it doesn't function. It's against humanity. It's just insane. And, basically, it doesn't function. And people they do not trust in what they are told any longer, and they can see with their own eyes that the country is no longer functioning. You know what? I was traveling with a train last week, what I never done for a very long time. The train system in Germany basically is broken. You cannot go any longer with a train and be sure you be there on time. Our system is no longer able to keep the trains working correctly. Very easy things. And people realize it. And so they stop listening to what they are told they should do, and they do what they think is correct. And what is correct is the policy which has been offered by all those right-wing populistic parties in all over Europe, and the ones in Germany to address this is the AfD.
Beatrice, there was a piece in Gateway Pundit this week. We had this global governance meeting at the UN on the 20th. We were big in the United States of putting forward how we've got to stop this, how we got to stop it through Congress. I know you had a piece, and you talked about actually the Banners that might be in back of all this, the WHO, all this. Can you walk us through this piece? Because I got to tell you, it got a lot of coverage here in the United States. Walk us through your piece about this WHO, global governance, and the billionaires in back of this.
What we know is that the World Health Organization is now trying to, come up with a policy change, and they want to stop pandemics from spreading. So they want to take all the powers of the governments of the world to take the right decisions to stop pandemics from growing in the world, which basically means they want to have the power which has been in the hands of the national governments, and to take themselves the decision what to be done to fight some kind of pandemic. And this is frightening, because the World Health Organization has not been elected by anybody. There's no kind of democratic legitimation of the World Health Organization. It's just a combination, an organization set up by private organizations, funds like Rockefeller and Bill and Melinda Gates foundations and so forth in some countries, of course. But it's not a democracy, and they want to take the decisions, and they want to oblige all member states to follow their rules. I think that's dangerous, and we have to talk about it, and we have to make people aware that they are at the very moment preparing to taking basically the power of the parliaments of the world to the General Secretary of the World Health Organization, which is this Ethiopian, Marxistic, Leninistic, putschist, the one who took they took the power in Ethiopia by a plot, and this guy wants to govern and wants to decide what's going on in Germany and other member states. I think that's frightening. This is frightening, and we have to, first of all, start to talk about it and get to people's awareness that we have to very closely focus what the WHO is planning, and then we have to go against it.
Real quickly, we got about a minute, and I want to hold you through the break, but the Christian Democrats, the Tories in London, and a lot of the Rhino Republicans here, have no problem with the loss of sovereignty. Why is it party supposed to be center-right like the Christian Democrats? Why do they have no problem with this?
I didn't get. Sorry, I didn't get that question again, please.
I tell you what. Why don't we wait to the break, because I want the answer to this. So the question is, and we got to go to break. It seems like when you talk about these issues of sovereignty in these transnational organizations backed by billionaires like WHO, that the Christian Democrats in Germany, the Tories in England, and a lot of the traditional Rhino Republicans here have no problem with this. It is always kind of the populist right that sits up and says, hang on, our sovereignty is absolutely critical. I tell you what, we're going to go to a commercial break. While we hang on, we have Betrix van Storch, the deputy of Alternative for Deutschland. That's now the number 2 party in Germany, and that is causing an uproar. The Economist this week has a huge story on the rise of the populist right in Europe, and let's say the Economist does not view that as a positive thing. I've got Dave Walsh here who's going to tell us about John Kerry, all of these efforts at the UN, all these efforts in the Capitol to implement exactly what they've done in Germany here in the United States of America. He's beavering away. Of course, our own Ben Harnwell, we're going to have a deeper dive on this Ukraine situation and how it's coming apart here, the funding of it in the United States of America. Short commercial break. Back in the War Room in just a moment.
War Room Battleground with Stephen K. Bannon.
So, Beatrice, why did the Christian Democrats in Germany, the Tories in England, and the Rhino Republicans in the United States, why are they not concerned about the sovereignty of these nations with these transnational organizations backed by billionaires that you at the Alternative for Deutschland is supposed to be this radical right party? Why is the Christian Democrats not concerned about the sovereignty of the German people in the nation state of Germany?
I think there are different reasons. I think some are just stupid. I think some might make a lot of money out of it. Who knows? And the third thing is that they are not so much in favor of democracy. I mean, we're very much in favor of democracy, and we think it is very good to have sovereign nation states to take their own decision. And if the people do not want the government anymore, they can vote for another one, which means they keep the sovereignty. And some of those so-called conservatives, I don't know, I think they're not so much in favor of this idea, and they're very happy to give away sovereignty and to have others to take unpopular decisions, maybe to fight pandemics like the way we have seen it with COVID. So I think they're different. They're different explanations. And some, I think, are just not reading the treaties. They're just not aware of what is going on. They're just walking around and they call it all a conspiracy theory, what they have not even read, what they might not have understood. I don't know. I think there's several reasons. But I can tell you that there's one party in Germany, which is Alternative for Germany, which is very much aware of what is going on. We do read what is planned by the World Health Organization. We do understand what's going on. We communicate it loud and clear and tell the people, be aware, we cannot have this take of the power of the WHO. And we address the problem, and all the problems we have addressed in the past: migration, inflation, economy, climate change. We told the people before what will happen if we follow the government. Now we're doing the same thing with the WHO pandemic plans, and I hope we succeed and we open the eyes of the people, and we have to stop them, because we are trying to keep our national sovereignty and our democratic state in the way it is.
Beatrice, how do people follow you? What's your social media? What's the website that people can go and find out more? Because you're one of the leaders in this movement of sovereignty and self-determination of people, of citizens throughout the world.
I'm on
in our nation states. Where do people go?
I'm on Facebook, on Telegram, on Instagram, always with my name, Betrix von Storch. Thank you for asking.
Beatrice, thank you so much. And great job in Germany. We're so proud of the efforts. We know you guys have been under tremendous pressure. Honored to have you on here.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. So, Dave Walsh, I want you to come in. You warned us for 2 years that this was happening in Germany, and now you have one of the leaders of the opposition party that is growing leaps and bounds. And why is it growing, Dave Walsh? Exactly what you said was going to happen, that people are just not going to sit there in an advanced industrial state. And you're the first guy to say it. You're saying, hey, Steve, what they're actually doing is deindustrializing. They're using their energy policy to do it, but they're going to deindustrialize. Give me your thoughts on Betrix and what's actually happening in Germany right now.
Well, they announced in the second quarter negative growth of 0.2% GDP. They're forecasting in the third quarter zero growth. Consumption, personal consumption declined in the second quarter, which is remarkable in Germany. And the basic issue is the major industrials, Bayer AG, BASF, BMW, Siemens Energy, ThyssenKrupp, all heavily dependent on energy inputs, electricity specifically, to be competitive manufacturers, have systematically moved, and more now recently, a lot of announcements of moving programmatically to China, to India. In the past was South Carolina, North Carolina, Siemens Energy's biggest factories in Charlotte, BASF, BMW out by Spartanburg, South Carolina. Energy costs there, electricity historically 6, 7, 8 cents per kilowatt hour. Germany, before the crisis, 45 cents, now double that. So these companies that make heavy industrial products cannot make them in Germany. The cost of the electricity inputs are simply too high. And that drives unemployment in Germany. It drives GDP decline. And that's what they're saying. And that's why the rise of the AfD is occurring. It's about people, and it's about the interest of people, not in industrial decline, such as John Kerry is running around promoting on Morning Joe this morning, vis-a-vis his discussion about China.
Okay, this is we don't have time to play the clip, but one of the points I'm trying to make is that Germany is just X amount of years ahead of us. Kerry's plan, and this plan is so radical. And what upsets me so much on Capitol Hill is you're having a more of an adult conversation here in War Room with you and with Ben and with Beatrice than you have up there. This plan that Kerry is putting forward and that the private equity guys are talking about, it's in the heart of the Biden energy plan. It's one of the reasons our economy is so screwed up. The plan Kerry's talking about is actually as radical about deindustrialization as the plan in Germany. Is it not, sir?
It absolutely is. We laid out before the forecast of rapid adoption of renewables in the U.S. out to 2030 will cause the building of about 700,000 megawatts of solar and wind, which when you restate that because of its part-time energy value, wind about 8 hours a day, solar on average about 5 hours a day, you're really talking about roughly 200 megawatts of electricity 200,000 megawatts being added, which with the 100,000 in coal shutdowns forecast to occur, brings us to only about 4.3% in electricity growth over a 9-year period out to 2030. So while we're talking about EV adoption, we're talking about gas to electricity conversion for heating in the Northeast, Midwest. The numbers don't work on this because these energy sources, be it solar and wind, and battery storage, a 4-hour-a-day technology, they don't work 24 hours a day. The net electricity capacity of this stuff at an enormous cost is far, far lower than conventional coal, gas, and nuclear. And no one's really talking about this, leading to the energy shortage we have in Texas, growing in MISO and PJM, coming to visit Florida soon, California for years now already, massive shortage of electrification because of over-adoption of part-time resources and the shuttering of 24-hour-a-day resources, being nuclear, coal, and now increasingly gas.
Like I said, we don't have time to play a clip, but Kerry is talking. He's pitching like we're falling behind China because they're becoming leaders in sustainable energy. They're building more coal power plants than ever. I want you to give the number. Bloomberg just came out yesterday and said he's going to put $500 million. This is another guy worth $70 billion. He's going to put $500 million of cash money to shut down every coal plant and every coal mine in the United States of America. So is Kerry right? Is China really the leader in sustainable energy, or are they not stealing a march on us on coal production and using coal to produce cheap energy?
He misstated and conflated facts. China is, in its zeal to grow industrial and militarily, is growing energy resources of all types. Number one, coal. Between 2021 to 2026, their plan is to add 758 gigawatts of coal assets. Yes, about 800 gigawatts of renewables. But when you restate those numbers for their energy production value, China's adding net 700 gigawatts of coal and 244 of renewables. When you restate the renewables from rating plate values down to their actual energy production. So they're adding, in a 5-year period, out to 2026, 2.2 times more coal. Last year, they announced plans to build 2 coal plants a week. In 2023, they're building 6 out of 7 coal plants in the world. They're radically growing their coal infrastructure. Today, they're 60% dependent on coal, which is a local indigenous resource, as they're announcing their need to be independent, to be self-sustaining within their own country. They're about 3% gas-fired, so 63% fossil-powered. At this time, only about 12% classic renewable solar and wind, about 13% hydro. But what they're growing also that the West is not doing is a nuclear base. 57 nuclear reactors being built in the world, 21 of those in China, 37% of them. And of those reactors, by the way, 44 of the 57 are being built in BRICS nations or in the global south. 44 of 57 reactors in the world. The United States and Western Europe are building exactly 2. Just to show you, because this is Sierra Club.
It's ridiculous. They understand what it takes for economic growth, and this is this whole thing. They want this whole burden of this cult of climate change on the American people. Hang on for 1 second, Dave. I want to bring in Ben. Ben, you've been in the European Parliament, but when you see, and this is the question for you, these center-right Christian Democrats, Tories, these radical energy policies, the climate cult, and also kind of ceding our sovereignty, their sovereignty, to things like the WHO. I mean, this was the whole Brexit fight was about to get England out of the EU. Why is it that traditionally conservative governments and conservative governmental apparatuses are a huge part of the problem now? And that's why you're seeing the growth of the populist right, sir.
Well, I divide that question into 2 quick parts. The first part is, why is environmentalism a priority for the internationalist institutions? And then I'd say, why is it affecting the centre-right political parties? To answer the first part of that, it's because the environment is one of those things which, we're all nationalists here on this show, but the environment, to the extent that the environment legitimately can be a concern, and I'm not talking about climate change or anything like that, but the environment is something which requires a supranational coordination, collaboration. And the international institutions buy into that and use that like shoehorn to justify basically taking over all areas of the economy, which is what they're now doing under the guise of man-made climate change. Why the centre-right political parties are buying into that is really due to the collapse, I think, of the concept of freedom and liberty after, ironically enough, the fall of the Berlin Wall, which concentrated people's minds in the West exactly what they were fighting against, which is sort of state-run socialism, communism. Once that wall fell, it's not that the world learned the lesson that state management of the economy fails. It's that we, in the so-called free countries, we lost the focus on why we believe in liberty and personal responsibility so much. And losing that focus, which is ironically something that the communists within our societies have never done. They never lost their sense of focus. They carried on just as if the whole of the fall of the Berlin Wall passed them by. And therefore, the centre-right political parties what kind of politician, knowing as we do that our politicians are sociopaths, what politician will decline the opportunity, should they lose their seat at the national level, to be bumped upstairs and earn sort of factors more in terms of the salaries and perks that are available at the supranational level, at the European Parliament, for example? What kind of person would do that? Well, you really need someone who like Nigel Farage, who when he was in the European Parliament agitated to lose his own job via Britain's exit from that from the European Union. We don't elect politicians, Nigel Farage, Betrix, von Storch. They're exceptions. We have to accept some responsibility of ourselves, that we're electing politicians, even in the centre right, even in the economic nationalist right. We are electing representatives, and we're still doing it, who aren't really part of our movement and want to champion our causes. And the moment they get to the capital, they don't have to sell out because they were never part of the deal.
Ben, real quickly, I'm going to get you back on hopefully tomorrow about Ukraine, if not on Monday. But is part of this the loss of faith in Western Europe, the Judeo-Christian West, that now, because the moves on this climate change are so radical in deindustrializing advanced nations, is this cult really replaced to the elites the spirit of what the Catholic faith and the Christian faith provided for millennia?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty much true. You mentioned before that I worked in the European Parliament. I did about sort of 15 years or so ago. And I remember there watching how the former red parties, the communist parties, the same politicians who'd been there agitating sort of for communism in the 80s, they just switched from red to green. And I remember thinking, and they just carried on shamelessly. They just changed their political affiliation. They invented this new environmentalism concept. And I remember thinking to myself 15 years ago, people aren't this dumb. They're never going to be able to get away with this transformation. Obviously, they've just switched their shtick for political expediency. But people are too astute. Sadly, that's not true. And what started off as an opportunity to get failed politicians fighting a failed ideology to keep them in the game, it has grown very much to become, Steve, a false, synthetic, pseudo religion. That's absolutely true. And of course, human nature being what it is, seeing as we're created by God, to love and adore and to worship God, Jesus Christ. If you don't do that, if you don't have Jesus Christ at the centre of your life, if you don't even have one of the other religions that are there throughout human history, that you will believe something, because we've been made by God to respond to an existential call. And if you don't take one of the standard explanations that are there, you will believe anything. And that ought to be the lesson of the 20th century. I'm not sure how much people have learnt those lessons, but that's absolutely the case. Environmentalism today is a false religion. It has its priests, it has its sacrifices, has all the paraphernalia of a false religion. I would suggest that there's the sense of sulfur around this, simply because it is distracting people, instead of worshipping God, worshipping Jesus Christ, to be worshipping that which is created rather than that which is the creator.
Ben, what is your social media? We'll look back getting you on tomorrow or Monday on the Ukraine situation. A lot to go on there. I know you're on top of it. Where do people follow you on social media?
Thank you so much, Steve. Warroom.org is the first port of call, where myself, Jarl and Natalie Winters will pushing out exclusive articles on that. Please, if you haven't done it already, do subscribe for those newsletters. On Getter, you can either come to me at Harnwell, there's my name there at the bottom, my surname, Harnwell, that's the profile name, or, you could even sort of check me out, because Stephen K. Bannon does repost me occasionally on his site. Go to @Steve Bannon, and I'll also, you'll find my posts there as well.
The reason I do it, I'm quite jealous that his has a lot more engagement than mine. I think it's part of the things of him reading all the comments and engaging with the audience. Ben, great job. Honored to have you on here. Thank you for coming in from Rome. Dave Walsh, I'm going to have you back on next. We got to go through what Kerry did. You nailed this. Germany, because of the embrace by the elite of this dangerous cult, is rapidly industrializing based upon their energy policy. And what you're seeing now is a revolt of the German people against it, just like you're seeing a revolt of the American people against what's happening here. But the plans of carrying these guys, I think, are actually more radical than the Germans. Where do people go to your social media, Dave, to keep up with you?
It's at Dave Walsh Energy on Getter, and True Social the same. Thank you, Steve.
You've done an amazing job, Dave, of showing us what the future is going to be. Quite frankly, when you first came out a couple of years ago, when you first started talking about this, I think a lot of people were thinking, given how precise and engineering oriented the Germans are, that would never happen. It's happened exactly like you said it was going to happen. So thank you very much.
Well, we got a quick on the UK. We get BP is advancing their relationship with Sonatrach in Algeria to bring pipeline gas into Western Europe to offset the shortage from the Russian stoppage, while they're unable to harvest natural gas and oil in the North Sea any longer because of the elitist and monarchy-supported government in the UK, who's used as a poster child, King Charles, for the same issues on decarbonization. It's very sad. It's incredibly sad.
Unbelievable. This is why I've always been a Irish Republican. Dave Walsh, thank you very much. Great analysis.
Bye-bye.
One thing, hopefully this show is talking about a alternative economy, a patriot economy. We got to stop giving our money to people that hate us. And trust me, the cult of climate change hates you. Public SQ, Michael Seif and the team have come up with an alternative. It's a trading exchange. It doesn't cost you any money. It's advertising supported. If you're an entrepreneur and you want to list your company, your product or services to reach the patriots of the country, quite frankly, the world, go there a day you can list. If you're someone that wants to buy products and services from people that support your values and don't hate you, go to Public SQ also. It doesn't cost you anything. Go check it out. Check the app out. It'll be an amazing experience for you. Stop giving your money to people that hate you. Also, tomorrow we're going to get into it in depth. The massive fight going on right now in Capitol Hill, driven by this audience, driven by you. You are at the head of the table. You're head of the creditors committee. We got to get you fully up to speed on everything about capital markets. Great way to start is go to birchgold.com/Bannon. You get the End of the Dollar Empire. It's a multi-part series, totally free. The 4th installment's out, and you're going to find out what the self-inflicted wounds of the United States by our elites, starting in the 30s, but really exacerbated in the 1970s. Go check it out. Draw down the 4th free episode, and also talk to Philip Patrick and the team at Birch Gold about what Dave Walsh is saying. The BRICS are not just building nuclear power plants, they're buying gold at record rate. Ask the team at Birch Gold why. We're going to be back here at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning live in the War Room. Do not miss it. We need you here at the head of the Creditors Committee table. See you then.